Surgeon-guided, technology-driven, robotic arm-assisted surgical technology for hip and knee replacements. Available at Kansas Spine and Specialty Hospital, proud sponsor of KPTS, Public Television for Kansas.
The following program is brought to you by TZ Productions, celebrating KPTS's nearly 50 years of community support in South Central Kansas. Great starts here on KPTS.
Support also comes from viewers like you. Thank you.
These stories are like old friends. Their lives radiate from the screen like prophets of the past. They were teachers, but not in a classroom. Instead, they taught about life to those around them who cared to listen, and I was their student. Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us. We begin with the story of history hidden for centuries. Now, you never know what you might find right in your own backyard.
Larry and I worked with Marty Johnson at a local news station, but she became one of Hatteberg's people when she uncovered something on the family homestead that no one had ever noticed.
It looks like a pasture, but it's not. This special piece of Sedgwick County land is a recently discovered ancient American Indian ceremonial site. It was a holy place.
This has always been real special ground to me.
Marty Johnson lives on this land. It's been in her family for 4 generations.
This was my grandpa's cow pasture.
Grandpa was Walter P. Hutchinson, and this little piece of prairie was where his cattle grazed. Nobody thought much about it until his granddaughter burned off the prairie.
And here was a pathway, and here was a wall or an embankment, and over here was a trench. And the more I walked around, the more I was like, this was something pretty big.
It's entirely too large to be visible all at once on the ground.
And with the help of WSU archaeologist Dr. Donald Blakesley, they found the remains of an ancient Indian ceremonial site that could date from the 1400s.
This is absolutely one heck of an exciting find.
This aerial photograph shows the size of the site. Now, it's directly behind Marty Johnson's house. First, you see an earthen embankment the shape of a rectangle. Now, within this rectangle are trenches that may have been sacred paths. Then around the site are intaglios dug from the ground. These may have been figures of snakes, turtles, or even ducks. The size of the serpent-like figure is nearly 27 meters long.
I can't imagine anything better than this site.
On the ground, it's hard to see. Only a trained archaeologist can give us a clue.
This is one of the figurines at the site.
It's clear to Dr. Blakesley that these scooped-out earthen areas were once in the shape of animals. They're just not sure exactly which ones.
And there's a somewhat shallower head or appendage on it that gives it the form of a duck.
Landowner Marty Johnson isn't surprised the Indians chose this area for their ceremonies.
And I've known my whole life that God bends very close to the earth here. And if this is where the Indians came to talk to their Great Spirit, I understand why.
And it adds tremendous power to our ability to interpret what human beings are all about.
For scientists, this site is like an archaeological Walmart. For Marty Johnson, this land has always had spiritual overtones.
There's not a problem in the world you can't solve out here on the prairie. I mean, you know, you see God's hand.
And the land will slowly continue to reveal its secrets about a native people whose culture is only now slowly being understood.
It's an opening into an avenue of research that simply didn't exist before.
Now, an update to that story. Marty just recently was granted a conservation easement for the land, and she says it was the first one ever issued here in Kansas. And that means nobody will be able to develop or disturb that land without the permission of the Kansas State archaeologist and the Mid-America All-Indian Center.
Thank goodness. Meanwhile, Dr. Blakesley says he's raising money to purchase remote sensing equipment so he can see what may be hiding below the surface from centuries ago. That, to me, is absolutely amazing. to think that Native Americans were on that land a long, long time ago.
We're all walking on history here in Kansas, and it's so wonderful when people actually take the time to discover that it's on their land.
It's on their land.
It's amazing.
So cool. Okay, now we're going to go to a couple of sisters with big dreams. Their sights were set on becoming the next big musical act. But in the meantime, they sang wherever they could find an audience. Here's Larry from 1999.
Remember your youth, your dreams, a time when nothing was impossible? Well, tonight, remember those days through the eyes of Jessica and Sissy Moore. On Hatteberg's People, two young women dream of hitting the big time, and tonight we find out why.
We've been singing in choirs and groups since we were in 2nd grade, and they tried to get us to play instruments, but that didn't work. We carry ours with us. Look into my brown eyes, and what do you see? A young, luscious woman, wild and free.
In a small Winfield apartment, twin sisters Jessica and Sissy Moore aren't shy about their talent.
Buy a ticket to anywhere.
They write their own songs and will soon head to Nashville, hoping to be discovered.
I just knew in my heart that's what I was supposed to do. Sing for somebody, somewhere. Just because everybody else is doing it doesn't mean that you can't.
But for now, they have an unlikely stage.
If I let you into my heart and control what I fear, if I let
At Campbell's Restaurant in Augusta, Sissy Moore waits tables.
Okay. Have we made a decision? No. Well, then I'd suggest breakfast. She's got wild dreams and high hopes. If you don't follow your dream or try your dream at least once, that's regret. Ever since I can remember, I've been singing.
Sister Jessica is in the kitchen.
When you see her walk by, don't be afraid to tell her hi. Thank you. I'm not very good at math. I don't like science. I hate school. But when I was in school, that's what I looked forward to every day, was being able to sing in my 3 choir classes. Can be there for me when I want to be free. So
Between bites, the audience gets a concert.
I like seeing the expression on their faces when you sing to them, because they're not expecting anything, especially a song they haven't ever heard before. I just wait for the end, for the reaction, and if it's a good reaction, then I know I sang good. Thank you. That's what's good about singing, is your own new style. That's what groups of people like. Something different. She's got wild dreams and high hopes. She's living life on a heart that's broke. She needs strong hands to help her get by. When it comes to the truth, she don't tell no lies. It's time for the truth. You don't tell no more lies. She wrote that one.
Now, making it big in show business is always a 1 in a million shot. Jessica and Sissy's dream of stardom, well, it didn't come to pass. But then again, that's life. It's okay to dream, and sometimes things work out, and sometimes you have to have plan B.
You have to have plan B, and maybe that plan B was meant to be.
Exactly.
Don't you know?
Right.
Okay, this next story shows you the power of small-town pride and why holding on to history is so important.
Yeah, just a few years ago, the community of Council Grove was at a crossroads when a fire nearly destroyed its most historic business. It would have been easier just to tear it down, but a group of local residents, well, they wouldn't hear of it.
It's just an old frame building that Seth Hayes built back in 1857. It's just a real piece of history that we just had to keep going.
It is the oldest continuous restaurant west of the Mississippi. Located on the Santa Fe Trail in downtown Council Grove, tourists and local folk make it popular.
The most historically significant site in the Flint Hills.
Now the old restaurant is open once again following a December fire. Now that fire caused the building's owners to put it up for sale. But because the restaurant was too important to the history of the town to have an uncertain future, citizens took action.
Well, it was hard to say it was a good investment, but it was not hard to convince people that we needed to keep the Hayes House open and bring it back to the quality that every diner was used to.
25 investors stepped forward to form a company to run the restaurant and keep the Hayes House alive.
All small towns have to get together and take care of themselves because nobody else is going to do it for them.
Key to that decision was Chef Rick Paul. He actually owned the restaurant for 20 years, from 1981 to 2002. Through mutual agreement, he returned.
We want to be able to keep this legacy alive for the next 155 years.
Over the years, the Hayes House has been key to this community. Council Grove, known for its history, and in the basement of the Hayes House, the original bar still exists.
The footrail on the front was obviously used a lot back then. People come to the Hayes House initially maybe for the history. We always wanted to be able to come back for the food.
This is what we do. Our investment group is really here for one reason only, and that's to sustain and perpetuate the Hayes House for generations to come.
We're very lucky that the folks stepped forward, realized the importance of the Hayes House, not only for Council Grove, but for Kansas history.
Upstairs, visitors can see original walls from the 1850s, still visible, and now a key part of the decor. It's touches like these that make the Hayes House an indispensable part of Kansas history.
This is actually the town's restaurant. I mean, it always has been.
Well, that story is from 2012, and since then, the Hayes House has continued to be a centerpiece of the town, both as a hangout for locals and a tourist destination. I know you've been there before.
I love it. And you know what's so important is you read in the tourism books about Kansas, these are national books that say, you got to make it to that house. You've got to make it to that restaurant.
And there are so many people right from Wichita who've never been there.
I know. It's worth the trip, worth the drive. If you ever travel along Highway 54 just west of Mullinville, you've surely seen it, the art of M.T. Ligget.
It is incredible, Susan. It's right there along the north side of the road, a barrage of outdoor folk art that some find clever and others say it's a bit profound, and others, well, they get infuriated with it. Now, this story is from 1993.
Yeah, I call myself the Picasso of the junkyard. Maybe someday it'll be worth something.
Maybe, but right now it's a car stopper just west of Mullinville on 154 Highway. It's a field of political commentary.
I hope so.
The commentator and artist is M.T. Ligget, and this field is called
Totem Pole Park. No, I just call it Totem Pole Park, that's all. And I call my work disco art, because everything on it, most of it's got a disc. But you see now here what I'm trying to say, this is Gore and Clinton dumped the Hicks in 96 and got a commode upside down. I mean, I don't need to say anything else, do I?
Working in a garage that smells of burnt metal and oil, Ligget welds his art into sharp political barbs, and he doesn't much care what you think about it.
I really believe that if you're going to pattern yourself after somebody's life, or you're going to worry about what everybody thinks, it's time to call Jack Kevorkian. So I'm trying to get the American people wise up to what our political system is doing to us.
From all over, people stop and look and photograph.
And this is our glorious county commissioners. This is the first pole to put up out here. Well, you know, if you read the true definition of stooge, it's not necessarily a bad word.
If you think this is just some old uneducated guy haranguing the politicians just to keep busy, he's not.
It tells him that he don't have an original thought and never has had one.
He's got 2 degrees, political science and history, and a degree in criminal justice.
Susan Korstner is the gal that testified at the Clarence Thomas hearings. And the reason why I put that up there is she got up there, and I don't figure she's telling the truth. They were not out. They were out to ruin Clarence Thomas. And the only reason Clarence Thomas won is he's smarter than they were.
Now, he didn't like Governor Finney when she vetoed the corporate hog farming bill. Then He was in a crowd that booed the governor, and he felt that booing was uncalled for.
Well, I had her up as a dingbat, and I changed my mind on the old gal. I think Joanne Finney's all right. She's doing the best she can. I just think she got out of her league. You've heard of Bobbit. Don't need to say anything else on that one, do I?
Inside this old garage, among the dust, the dirt, and the debris, another pole about to be unveiled.
Oh, this is going to be for either Donna Shalala or Ruth Ginsburg, you know, that new Supreme Court justice. I mean, does it need to say anything more?
M.T. Ligget believes everyone should take a stand on what they believe. He does, and makes no apologies.
I'm satisfied with my life. I got a pocket full of money, and I got to go with a lady over there in Ford's, probably one of the nicest people I ever met. You know, I've dealt my deck of cards, and I'm playing them.
Now, he was a straight talker who kept updating his art just to keep it relevant to current events. We can only imagine what he'd be saying now about our current political climate. He'd have so much to say, we wouldn't be able to shut him up. He was a great guy.
Oh.
But you either liked him or you didn't. There was no middle ground with MT.
And what you don't know about M.T. Ligget is he would call the newsroom just on a whim.
Oh, yeah, just to talk.
Ask for Larry and I and just talk away the afternoon.
We had a great time with him.
He was so much fun. He passed away in 2017 at the age of 86. His roadside displays were left to a trust. And guess what? Larry is one of the trustees charged with preserving that art and ensuring it remains on public display. So how's that been going?
It's been going well. There are a group of trustees out there, and yes, I am one of them. But collectively, we're trying to figure out how to save his art for future generations. And that's the goal, is to make it relevant for people who have never seen it before. So we're working on that.
Okay.
More to come.
And you will let us know when you put that art someplace.
We'll do a story.
Okay.
Okay, here's another artistic Kansas character who also specialized in large-scale art. Rusty Mock of Augusta worked strictly with wood, but just like MT, he was a hoot to visit with. This is a trip back to 1982.
Meet Rusty Mock, woodcarver, philosopher, and just plain good old boy.
That's the way you want her?
That's exactly the way I wanted it.
Well, mister, you got her, you know that?
Rusty has lived in Augusta, Kansas most all his life. He's been carving wood for over 55 years, and he's one of only a handful who create totem poles.
Sure, it's pretty white wood, but looks about like schoolmom's leg, don't it, Larry? Girls like the carvings, you know that? Yeah, you don't have any trouble getting rid of them. There's always some sucker to buy them, you know that? That's gonna make one hell of an eagle when he gets through with it, Larry, you know that? I'll make him fetch your pocketbook. If you got any money, I'll get it. I give a lot of it away, but I found out you get money for it, so I went doing it for money, you know that? That makes a difference.
Some of Rusty's carvings weigh more than 500 pounds. And if you don't know by now, Rusty loves a good joke. He likes people, and he mixes his work with his talk.
Oh, it's just pastime. It's good for what ails a guy. It's just like a mean woman. When she's mean, you can get out of the house and go to wood carving, you know that? Not long she come down talking to you again when you have a lot of trouble, you know that? Yeah, it's just kind of the way it goes.
Each of Rusty's larger carvings has their own distinct personality.
I just kind of like to do it in spare time. I'd hate to be a wood carver, though. I'd rather just do it when I want to do it. I think you're better at it. One of the old gals that walked across in the wagon train, that's who that's patterned after. She got kind of a pretty face, though, hadn't she, Larry?
Kind of pretty, Rusty, in an early frontier sort of way. Rusty's carvings, made from solid pieces of wood, are classics, but then so is Rusty. And by the way, next time you see him, don't forget to ask about his hat.
Well, that hat I bought it in 1928 at Denver, Colorado. Farmer and stockman, 15th and Laramie. Paid $7.35 for it. Wife thinks I ought to get the oil changed in it, but it's still a good old hat. They'll probably bury me with it, but it's a good hat. It's had a lot of wear. Just getting it broke in good, just like an old shoe. It's a really nice hat to wear.
Rusty sells his carvings nationwide, but don't worry, success hasn't changed this man. Like his carvings, Rusty Mock is an original. I'm Larry Hatteberg.
That's the size of it. That's about all there is to it.
Now that story is from 36 years ago. Rusty, of course, has since passed away, but a lot of his totem poles are surely still out there. He was such a character to be around. He had a story for everything, and he always wore a hat that he had purchased like in the 1940s.
He did.
Yeah, and it was, as you saw in this piece, it was just this greasy old hat. He was just an icon of quotes.
And you could
really
tell he had joy in his heart doing that.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, they don't build cars now like they used to. Mechanically, of course, they may be better, but back in my day, cars had style, and it was easy to tell a Chevy from a Ford or a Toyota. And there was one kind of car in particular that tickled the fancy of R.J. Bartel.
Hillsboro, one of those perfect little towns where church life maintains the order and living has its own pace.
We'll take care of this accident for you.
That's R.J. Bartel over there, hard at work.
You're not going to get it fixed right away anyhow, are you?
In the insurance business.
This model here was the first model built.
And this is where he plays.
Cars has been my life.
Ralph Nader will never send R.J. a Christmas card. You see, the Corvair, Nader's nemesis, is Bartel's favorite.
I've been a car buff all my life since I was born, practically.
Years ago, his collection began. He found a man who wanted to sell.
Finally, he says, make me an offer, and I did, and I had 40 Corvairs in one shot.
He culled them out, and now he's down to about 20 of these rear-engine air-cooled wonders.
When I get disgusted, sometimes I just drive. I just love to drive.
But today, it won't happen.
Afraid it won't take off. I had it running beautiful this morning. Just run beautiful.
The Corvair was tired, but R.J. doesn't care. It will run again. He'll see to that.
I'll tell you what, they're increasing in price. I never paid over $800 for any of them. Well, today they're worth anywhere from $2,000 to $6,000 to $8,000. See, they're like money in the bank at interest, good interest. See, maybe it's my retirement list sometime.
These are his treasures, and this old storage building is Bartel's refuge from the world. Here, he doesn't see old cars. He sees the shiny chrome, the clean lines in a car that he doesn't believe deserved its reputation.
And if you look, the contour of the cars, they're not too much different than the modern. They're a speedy car and they're a sports car. And then they really run good and they have good gas mileage.
So let's try it just one more time. Just crank that sucker once more.
Trade out.
Cars are finicky creatures, and these are no different. When R.J. cleans the carburetor, you'll see him around Hillsboro in his Corvairs. For him, that is real living.
They're real special to me.
R.J. passed away several years ago after a good, long life. His Corvairs were sold off. They're no longer in one place, but are spread out among several owners. Lots of people can enjoy them now.
Yeah, so many people collect cars, and they really have a love affair with these cars. He was one of them.
Corvairs are so unique, too.
Oh, they are.
Okay, now let's dial way back into the time machine to 1984. The location? Lindsborg, Kansas.
Now, that was the time I visited an old-town cowboy turned artist. He had suddenly become famous when the Gipper took notice of his work.
They stand frozen in bronze, a tribute to the Old West, and sculpted by an artist some might call a maverick. Frank Reese Sr., a Lindsborg artist who's more at home in overalls and on a horse than with the fame that has thrust him into the world of art.
I grew up thinking all artists were sissies. I heard my kids talk about they had to be in the mood to work art, and I thought that just didn't make sense to me. But since I've been at it, I found out that's right.
It was President Reagan who put the media spotlight on Reese when he accepted this bronze bighorn sheep sculpture. Another out of the same casting is on display in Reese's Lindsberg studio.
Anything got to do with the West, I like it.
His attention to detail and love for the Old West is displayed in his bronze sculptures that line his workroom.
It's never good enough for, my way of thinking. I never have it good enough. But there is a point you just got to quit on.
You might call Frank Reese a reluctant artist. Frank's an old farm boy with a love for horses, and as a high school dropout, he's never had an art lesson in his life. Yet his work brings thousands of dollars. He's a man who prefers overalls to suits.
Yeah, I think I got 2 suits in there, both of them brand new. If I have to wear them, they'll never get wore out. During these art shows, they have a lot of cocktail parties and one thing or another. I can get along without them.
Carving with wax before he makes the bronze casting, he studies the movements of both men and animals to make sure they're anatomically accurate, such as this perfectly formed horse's hind leg.
Yeah, you can't read books or it won't do you any good go to school if you can't got some idea what an animal looks like,
Well, Frank does, but he doesn't understand why all of us aren't sculptors.
To me, I think everybody should be able to copy anything they can see. If you can see it, I don't know why you can't reproduce it.
Reese comes from a family where the boys played sports. His father was a boxer, and it wasn't macho to be an artist.
Anybody that curled their hair or drawed pictures, they was in trouble.
Well, Frank Reese doesn't curl his hair, but he certainly is an artist. An artist in bronze. From Lindsberg, Kansas, this is Larry Hatteberg.
Now, Frank had a lot of art left in him after I left his studio that day. He lived another 31 years before passing away in 2015 at age 92.
Meanwhile, his beautiful bronze sculptures will continue to bring people pleasure for generations to come.
That's the wonderful thing about art. It pleases one generation, the other generation comes along and can enjoy it all over again.
All these stories are great records of Kansas history, and it's great to be able to share them once again with Kansans of all generations. And for that, we have Larry to thank. Thank you, Larry.
That's what I do.
Okay. He's so modest. And thank you for watching. I'm Susan Peters.
And I'm Larry Hatteberg. We are so glad you could join us. We will see you next time.
The preceding program was brought to you by TZ Productions, supporting KPTS and the communities it serves in South Central Kansas. Great starts here on KPTS.
Support also comes from viewers like you. Thank you. For a free copy of this program, become a new member of KPTS for a $40 contribution. If you are already a member, just send $25 for shipping and handling. Be sure to include the program's name, date, and time.